In the next 30 years, if current trends continue, the human species will hit a biological wall that no civilization in history has ever faced. We're not talking about war, famine, or disease. We're talking about something far more insidious. Between 1970 and 2011, human sperm counts dropped by 59%. That's more than half, gone, in a single generation. And it's accelerating. This isn't a medical curiosity. This is the infertility loop, a self-reinforcing cycle of biological collapse that has already begun, and once it closes, there may be no way out, right now in this moment. Your body is absorbing chemicals that your grandfather never encountered. They're in your food, your water, the air you breathe, even the chair you're sitting in. These aren't poisons in the traditional sense. They don't kill you immediately. They do something far more calculated. They hijack your hormones, the chemical messengers that control everything from mood to metabolism to the most fundamental human function of all, reproduction. Scientists call them endocrine disruptors, but that clinical term doesn't capture what they actually do. They impersonate your biology. The most common culprits are phthalates and bisphenol A, known as BPA. Phthalates are plasticizers, chemicals added to make plastic flexible. They're in vinyl flooring, food packaging, cosmetics, and medical tubing. BPA lines the inside of canned foods and is embedded in thermal receipt paper. Every time you touch a receipt from a gas station or grocery store, BPA transfers directly through your skin. These chemicals are structurally similar to estrogen, the primary female sex hormone. When they enter your bloodstream, your cells can't tell the difference. Your body treats them like the real thing. Here's where it gets terrifying. In males, this estrogen mimicry suppresses testosterone production. Testosterone is what drives sperm creation, muscle development, and sexual function. When BPA floods the system, the testes receive conflicting signals. The body thinks it already has enough hormones, so it stops producing them naturally. The result is lower sperm counts, reduced sperm motility, and damaged DNA within the sperm itself. In females, these chemicals disrupt ovulation and implantation, increasing rates of miscarriage and infertility. A study from Mount Sinai Medical Center found that women with higher phthalate exposure took longer to conceive, had higher rates of pregnancy loss. But the real horror isn't just that we're exposed. It's that we're saturated. The Centers for Disease Control tested urine samples from a representative population and found phthalate metabolites in nearly 100% of participants. 100%. There is no unexposed control group anymore. We are all part of the experiment. And unlike a drug trial, we never signed a consent form. These chemicals were introduced into consumer products in the 1950s and 60s without long-term reproductive studies. Industry assumed they were safe because they didn't cause immediate death. They were wrong. The average person ingests 5 grams of plastic every week. That's the equivalent of eating a credit card. Every 7 days. These aren't large chunks you can see and avoid. These are microplastics, fragments smaller than 5 millimeters, often invisible to the naked eye. They come from the breakdown of larger plastic items, synthetic clothing fibers, car tire dust, and industrial waste. They're in tap water, bottled water, sea salt, honey, beer, and the flesh of fish. There is no ecosystem on Earth that remains uncontaminated. In 2022, researchers in Italy made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the medical community. They found microplastics embedded in human placentas. Not on the surface, inside the tissue. These particles had crossed the blood-placenta barrier, something scientists believed was nearly impenetrable. The placenta is supposed to be a fortress, protecting the developing fetus from harmful substances. Microplastics breached it. They found polyethylene, polypropylene, and other polymer fragments in both the maternal and fetal sides of the placenta. In every sample they examined, they found plastic. Then, in 2023, a study from the University of New Mexico examined human testicular tissue. They found microplastics there too. In the very organ responsible for sperm production, plastic particles were accumulating. The concentrations were higher in younger men, suggesting exposure is increasing with each generation. These particles cause inflammation, oxidative stress, and physical obstruction of the seminiferous tubules, the microscopic structures where sperm are formed. Imagine trying to grow a garden in soil filled with shards of glass. That's what's happening inside the human reproductive system. Animal studies reveal the extent of the damage. Mice exposed to microplastics showed reduced sperm counts, abnormal sperm morphology, and impaired fertilization rates. Their offspring, even without direct exposure, exhibited reproductive defects. The damage was passed down. Fish in polluted waters have been found with plastic fibers woven into their gonad tissue. Their fertility rates have plummeted. In some species, entire generations are failing to reproduce. This isn't a distant theoretical threat. It's measurable, observable, and spreading. The human body is not designed for a sedentary existence, but that's exactly what modern life demands. The average adult in a developed nation spends over 10 hours a day sitting. Sitting in cars, sitting at desks, sitting in front of screens. This lack of movement has triggered a hormonal crisis. Testosterone levels in men have been dropping by approximately 1% per year since the 1980s. A man today has roughly 30% less testosterone than a man of the same age 40 years ago. This isn't aging. This is environmental. Testosterone is produced primarily in the Leydig cells of the testes, and its production is stimulated by physical activity, especially resistance training and high-intensity movement. When the body remains sedentary, testosterone production slows. Fat tissue, particularly visceral fat around the abdomen, converts testosterone into estrogen through an enzyme called aromatase. The more fat you carry, the more testosterone you lose. It's a vicious cycle. Low testosterone makes it harder to build muscle and easier to gain fat, which further lowers testosterone. Diet plays an equally catastrophic role. The modern Western diet is dominated by processed foods, refined sugars, and seed oils high in omega-6 fatty acids. These oils, found in nearly every packaged food, promote inflammation and interfere with hormone synthesis. Testosterone is synthesized from cholesterol, and while the body needs healthy fats for this process, it cannot function properly when flooded with inflammatory oils. Simultaneously, micronutrient deficiencies have become epidemic. Zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D are all essential for testosterone production, and most people are deficient in at least one. Sleep deprivation compounds the problem. Testosterone is produced primarily during deep sleep. The average adult now sleeps less than 7 hours per night, down from over 8 hours just 2 generations ago. Studies show that men who sleep 5 hours or less have testosterone levels 15% lower than those who sleep 8 hours. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, a hormone that directly suppresses testosterone. Modern life is a testosterone-killing machine, and the effects are compounding with every passing year. Lower testosterone doesn't just mean reduced fertility. It means reduced vitality, motivation, and resilience. Societies with declining testosterone are less competitive, less innovative, and less capable of confronting existential challenges. The collapse isn't just biological. It's civilization. Dr. Grandfather's choices are affecting your sperm. This isn't folklore. This is epigenetics, the study of how environmental factors influence gene expression across generations. The DNA sequence itself doesn't change, but chemical tags attached to the DNA, called methyl groups, can be altered by exposure to toxins, stress, or malnutrition. These tags determine which genes are turned on or off. And critically, they can be inherited, Studies on the Dutch hunger winter provide the clearest evidence. During the winter of 1944 to 1945, the Nazi occupation caused a famine in the Netherlands. Pregnant women endured severe malnutrition. Decades later, researchers tracked the children born during that period. They had higher rates of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. But the story didn't end there. The grandchildren, who were never exposed to famine, also showed metabolic abnormalities. The trauma of starvation had been encoded into the family line. The same mechanism applies to chemical exposure. When a pregnant woman is exposed to endocrine disruptors, those chemicals don't just affect her. They affect the developing fetus, and if that fetus is female, they affect the eggs already forming in her ovaries. Those eggs will one day become the next generation. 3 generations are exposed simultaneously. A single exposure event creates a cascade that ripples forward in time. Animal studies demonstrate this with horrifying clarity. Researchers exposed pregnant rats to a fungicide called vinclozolin. The chemical caused reproductive defects in the male offspring, including reduced sperm counts and testicular abnormalities. Those males were then bred with unexposed females. Their sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons all exhibited the same defects, even though only the original generation was directly exposed. The damage persisted for at least 4 generations. The loop had closed. In humans, we're seeing the same pattern. Men whose fathers worked in industries with high pesticide exposure have lower sperm counts. Women whose grandmothers were exposed to DDT during pregnancy have higher rates of infertility. The chemicals banned decades ago are still affecting us. And the new chemicals, the ones introduced every year without adequate testing, are setting traps for generations not yet born. We are creating a hereditary fertility crisis, and we won't fully understand the scale of it for another 50 years. There's a reason birth rates are collapsing in every developed nation. It's not just a matter of choice. It's biology responding to an environment that signals scarcity, threat, and unsustainability. The human body is an adaptive machine. When resources are scarce, when stress is chronic, when survival is uncertain, the reproductive system shuts down. This is a feature, not a bug. The body prioritizes survival over procreation. In 1960, the average couple could afford a home on a single income. Today, dual incomes often aren't enough. The cost of housing, healthcare, education, and childcare has skyrocketed while wages have stagnated. Young adults are drowning in student debt, working longer hours for less purchasing power. The economic structure of modern society is incompatible with family formation, and the body knows it. Chronic stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, flooding the system with cortisol. Elevated cortisol suppresses gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which is essential for triggering ovulation in women and sperm production in men. In women, chronic stress can cause anovulatory cycles, where ovulation doesn't occur at all. Menstrual cycles become irregular or stop entirely. In men, stress reduces libido, erectile function, and sperm quality. The body is making a calculation. This is not a safe environment to bring life into. Reproduction is delayed and eventually abandoned. Social isolation compounds the effect. Humans are social mammals. We evolved to live in close-knit communities with extended family networks and cooperative child rearing. The modern atomized existence, where individuals live alone in cities far from family, where relationships are transactional and temporary, creates a biological stress response. Loneliness triggers inflammation, disrupts hormonal balance, and accelerates aging. Studies show that socially isolated individuals have fertility rates 20 to 30% lower than those with strong social networks. Then there's the psychological component. The relentless messaging that children are a burden, that parenthood is a sacrifice of freedom and happiness, that the world is too broken to bring new life into, has created a culture of reproductive nihilism. While personal choice is valid, the aggregate effect is a society that has talked itself out of its own continuity. And once that belief system takes hold, biology follows. The brain and the body are not separate. What we believe about the future shapes our hormonal reality. In the 1960s, a researcher named John Calhoun conducted an experiment that would become legendary in behavioral science. He created a utopia for mice. Unlimited food, water, shelter, and space. No predators, no disease. Every material need met. The population exploded at first, doubling every 55 days. But then something unexpected happened. As the enclosure became crowded, social structures collapsed. Males became aggressive or completely withdrew. Females stopped nurturing their young. Mating behaviors disappeared. The mice had everything they needed to survive, but they stopped reproducing. Calhoun called the final phase the behavioral sink. The population crashed to extinction, even though resources remained abundant. The experiment ended not with starvation, but with sterility. Some researchers see parallels to modern human society. We have unprecedented material wealth, technological advancement, and access to information. Yet fertility is collapsing. Birth rates in South Korea, Japan, Italy, and Spain are already below replacement levels. China's population has begun to shrink. The United States only maintains its population through immigration. Globally, demographers predict that if current trends continue, the world will reach peak population by 2080, then enter irreversible decline. But the infertility loop suggests something darker. It's not just that people are choosing not to have children. It's that the biological capacity to have children is eroding. Sperm counts aren't just declining, they're plummeting. A study published in Human Reproduction Update analyzed data from over 57,000 men across 53 countries. The results were unambiguous. Sperm concentration fell from 99 million per milliliter in 1973 to 47 million in 2011. That's a 52% decline. And the rate of decline is accelerating. In the most recent decade studied, sperm counts were dropping 3 times faster than in previous decades. At this trajectory, researchers estimate that median sperm counts could reach 0. Meaning half of all men would be functionally sterile by 2045. That's 21 years away. This isn't a distant apocalypse. This is the reproductive equivalent of climate change. The tipping point is visible on the horizon, and we're accelerating toward it. So is the loop reversible? The answer is complicated. Some damage can be mitigated. Removing endocrine disruptors from consumer products, reducing microplastic pollution, improving diet and exercise, addressing economic inequality, these are all actionable. Countries like Denmark and France have already banned certain phthalates in children's products. Organic food consumption reduces pesticide exposure. Public health campaigns can raise awareness, but epigenetic damage is harder to undo. Once methylation patterns are established, they persist. It takes multiple generations of clean living to reset the biological baseline. And we don't have multiple generations. We have 1, maybe 2, before the decline becomes irreversible. The loop tightens with every passing year. Each cohort born into this chemical soup inherits a weaker reproductive system than the last. The children of today will have fewer children than their parents. And their children, if they can have them, will have fewer still. The infertility loop is not a conspiracy. It's an emergent property of industrial civilization. We built a world optimized for production and consumption, not for human thriving. The chemicals that made our lives convenient are now unraveling the biological code that makes life possible. And because the damage is invisible, cumulative, and intergenerational, we failed to notice until it was nearly too late. The question now is whether we have the collective will to break the loop. Not just to slow it, but to reverse it. That requires a fundamental rethinking of how we design our economies, our food systems, our cities, and our values. It requires acknowledging that infinite growth on a finite planet has biological consequences. It requires choosing long-term survival over short-term profit. If we don't act, the loop will close on its own. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. A generation that cannot conceive. A species that chose convenience over continuity. The infertility loop is the most urgent crisis humanity faces, and most people don't even know it exists. Now you do. Subscribe to understand how to break the biological loop.